What's up, guys? It's Joel, Puncher's Paintball. Today we are bringing you some well sought after information regarding paintball tanks and regulators, and discussing all the differences with all the different paintball tank regulators out there. If you guys like this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video. We'll see you guys after the intro. Alright guys, so we are here with a bunch of different paintball tank regulators. We've got Turtle behind the camera today, and we are going to discuss the differences here between all the different brands of paintball tank regulators. I'd like to mention that First Strike Regulators has not been included in this conversation, but I will discuss how First Strike Regulators kind of tie into paintball tank regulators. So basic conversation to have first, and probably most importantly, is that you have a paintball bottle or a paintball tank, and then you actually have the paintball tank regulator that sits on top of it. This is only for compressed air. If you're using CO2, it's just a valve. There's no regulation system. Inside this regulator, there's a piston with either a shim stack or a spring that regulates the amount of pressure from the tank that goes into the gun. Because you obviously don't want 3,000 PSI, 4,500 PSI going into the gun. Obviously it would wreck everything inside the gun and make for a bad day. So with that said, we're here to discuss output pressure is kind of one of the main things that we're going to be discussing, as well as construction and all that stuff goes. So starting off to my right here, we have a standard paintball regulator. This is going to come on a lot of your basic models. As you can see here, we have an HK Army 48-3000. But there's also the standard regulator that comes with carbon fiber HK Army tanks with Tippmann. Basically, for the most part, unless you're paying extra money, you're going to get a standard regulator. So with that said, what are you getting with a standard regulator? You're getting a fixed output pressure of 800 PSI that is non-adjustable. So with that said, most of these other tank regulators, you're going to be able to adjust your output pressure anywhere from 400 PSI to 800 PSI. And then also some of these tank regulators are going to have very fixed output pressure specific to guns. And we'll discuss that with the Ninja SLP, SHP, and stuff like that. It's still going to have all your basic bells and whistles here. So Turtle, can you zoom up on this a little bit? You're going to have your pressure gauge. You're going to have your pressure gauge here. Is it focusing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, yep. Great. So your pressure gauge, you're going to have your fill nipple, as well as on every paintball tank regulator out there, you're going to have a 1.8 burst disc and either a 5K or a 7.5 burst disc. That is going to be very important by telling what level of PSI your tank regulator is set to. So this one has a 5K. That is meant for a 3,000 PSI tank. So basically what that means is on every tank you have a 1.8 burst disc that's going to regulate the amount of pressure that goes into the gun. So it's never more than 1,800 PSI. And then you either have a 5K burst disc or a 7.5K burst disc. The 5K burst disc is for 3,000 PSI tank regulators, so you can never fill a 3,000 PSI bottle above 5,000. Or a 7.5K burst disc is going to be for a 4,500 PSI, either carbon fiber or aluminum. I guess I should say just carbon fiber, because any 4,500 PSI bottle is going to be carbon fiber. So you can never overfill to 7.5 over 7,500 PSI in that. Now with that said, if the 1.8 burst disc ever blows, it's because your tank piston is bad. So with the standard regulator, what I've found is that a lot of the standard regulators, over time, the integrity of the regulator just isn't as good. So that's why you're spending less money. A lot of times we have in the store here, we've had 1.8K burst disc blow with time. With time, I mean over a year, 2 years. What that's indicating is that the integrity of the regulator piston inside is starting to go, and that you need to actually rebuild the entire regulator. So that's your standard regulator. It's going to cost you less money, and you're not going to have an adjustable output pressure. Next up, we have the Ninja I'm going to talk about the Ninja Standard next. So Ninja Standard regulator is going to run you, I believe, $64.95. It is USA made. Ninja specializes in making regulators. So Ninja, that's basically what they're known for. It's USA made. It's better quality. A standard regulator from Ninja at $64.95 is going to get you a little bit better quality, as well as it's going to allow you to adjust your output pressure here. So I'm going to actually take this apart and explain to you guys what I mean by being able to adjust your output pressure. So with the standard regulator from Ninja, you're going to be able to adjust your output pressure anywhere from 450 psi to 850 psi, give or take. I might be 50 psi off there. It might be 400 to 800. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to take this regulator apart and you're going to take the shims out of it. So I'll show you here. The other thing I'd like to mention with the standard regulator is it is a shim stack design. It's not a spring design. For those of you that are a little bit more advanced, the shim stack for the most part seems to be a little bit more accurate when delivering regulation. All right, so I've now taken the bonnet, which is this top portion, off. I'm going to pull the piston out here. All right, Turtle, can you get up on this a little bit? So here is your piston. So every shim is going to be about, I believe, 100 psi, and then one of the shims that's different color, I believe, is 150 psi. So you're going to be able to adjust that. Standard from the factory, Ninja regulators all come in at about 800 to 850 psi. So I'm going to set those aside. If you take all of them out, you're going to be at the bottom of that regulation pressure range, which is going to be the 400 to 450 psi. So for certain, and this is why it matters, so for certain guns, depending upon the gun, older Bob Long guns require lower output pressure, as well as Bob Long, MacDev, older MacDev guns, so the Clone 5, the Clone GT, some of these older guns require lower output pressure, otherwise you could blow the solenoid. So, for example, if you were to take this standard regulator, hook it up to an old MacDev or old Bob Long gun, you stand the chance of blowing the solenoid. Even on newer guns, such as the Planet Eclipse CS1 model of gun, not so much the GO4, but if you have a CS1 or a CS1.5, the regulators, the inline regulators on those were a little bit more touchy to higher output pressure, so you definitely had to lower it. Sometimes I've seen where the inline regulators on the CS1 would actually start to squeak if you were at that 800 to 850 psi range, and if you take all the shims out of it, out of your Ninja regulator, it goes away. All right, so that's the standard regulator from Ninja. I'm going to set this aside here. It is a spring design, as I mentioned before. That's a shim design. Next up, we have the Pro V2. Pro V2, same construction here. I'm going to take the SLP out. Pro V2 is nice because this brass ring around it here, if you loosen that, you can actually change the orientation of where your pressure gauge as well as your fill nipple lie, which is really nice. So if you screw the gun in and say the fill nipple is sticking straight up towards you, towards the top of the gun, it can be really difficult to get your hose in to fill that. The standard regulator from Ninja does not offer that. You cannot do that with a standard regulator, just a basic regulator. You cannot do that either. So that is a really nice feature of the Pro V2. The Pro V2, just the regular base Pro V2, which is this one here, I'm just not taking it out of the package, is going to be the same construction as this SLP, but the regular Pro V2, you can adjust your output pressure anywhere from 450 psi to 850 psi. As well as it is a shim stack design. Ninja also offers a Pro V2 SLP, standing for super low pressure, means that you deliver a pressure of 300 psi. That is specifically designed for low pressure guns, such as the older MacDev guns, older Bob Long, and I'm sure I may be missing some. If you guys that are knowledgeable want to leave it in comments if I'm missing any of those other guns that are sensitive to output pressure. So the SLP is specifically designed for old school Bob Long guns and old school MacDev guns. I've had good success using the standard regulator with all the shims out of it at that 450 psi range. I put it on Bob Long guns, I put it on MacDev guns, and I've never had any issues with hurting the solenoid or anything else like that. If you're worried about that, I definitely recommend purchasing the Pro V2 SLP. If you're using an old Bob Long G6R, you're using an old Bob Long Ripper or something like that, VCOM engine, whatever the case may be. If you're using an old Bob Long gun, use SLP. It's never a bad choice. Retail price point of the Pro V2, the Pro V2 SLP, as well as the other one that's not mentioned here is the SHP, super high pressure, fixed output pressure of 1,000 PSI, 1,000 PSI for autocockers, for Tippmann guns, for auto mags, anything that requires high output pressure to be able to function. As you guys can think about it, Tippmann or a autococker has a lot of moving parts, so it functions best with high output pressure. All three of the Pro V2s, whether you're using the regular adjustable 450 to 850 PSI Pro V2, is going to be $84.95. The Pro V2 SLP is going to be $84.95. SHP, same thing, $84.95. All right, last but not least is going to be the Powerhouse Haymaker. This is also USA made. I believe it's made in Texas by a couple guys and is probably arguably the best quality when it comes to a regulator. These are going to be more expensive. They're going to come in at $139.95 for base colors. As you can see here, I've got the matte black. Nice part about these regulators that are offered from Infamous Paintball is that they do come in different colors, so you can anodize them. Cody, what do you got? You got the Rasta, right? The
Rasta, yes.
Yeah, the Rasta is pretty sweet. All different kinds of colors. They anodize them, and the upcharge isn't bad. It's only a little bit extra. Now, the Powerhouse is really nice. It's going to offer the same features as the Pro V2 in the sense that you can adjust where your pressure gauge and your fill nipple lie once the tank is all the way screwed in to your gun. That's a really nice feature. You're also going to be able to adjust your output pressure. A funky thing about the Powerhouse regs is that you need a special tool. I don't have it here. We do have it in the store.
It's right there in the box.
What's that?
It's in the box, I'm pretty sure.
No, it's actually a specialized tool.
Oh, the other one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, there's like a...
Yes.
You actually have to purchase it to be able to adjust your output pressure. So that's kind of a funky thing. And taking this apart, it's very high quality. The nice part, the reason I personally use the Powerhouse reg is because of the stainless steel construction. You can definitely feel it's got some good weight to it. My biggest thing is the top portion here is stainless steel threads, so you never have to worry about the threads going out. The Pro V2, or excuse me, the Ninja regs seem to be a little bit worse when it comes to that. The threads, for the most part, still stay intact for the most part, but over time the bonnet starts to wear. I've had my Powerhouse Haymaker for about 2 years now, and it still looks pretty much like the day it did when I got it, except for a little bit of crack on the gauge, which is pretty normal for just about any of these regulators. Same thing here. You've got a 7.5 burst disc. You've got a 1.8 burst disc. This one, instead of using a like a crescent wrench like you would with the Ninja regulators, you're just going to use an Allen key and take that out, put it back one, put a new one in if you need to. Overall, super good quality. I know that there's a lot of animosity out there when it comes to consistency on the Powerhouse regs. The Powerhouse regs, I've tested them personally. I don't have a video of it, but I have tested them personally. And one thing that I like to mention is the Powerhouse regs are just as or the Ninja regulators are just as consistent as the Powerhouse Haymakers. We put it on a gun that was had no regulation system. It was just strictly, I put it on my autococker that had a gas through grip, and the consistency was within 1 FPS over a variation of 10 shots. It was within 1 FPS. So if you are buying this for performance purposes when it comes to consistency, there's no difference. Buy yourself a Ninja. If you want the premium construction of the Powerhouse Haymaker, I would get the Powerhouse. I like the premium construction of the Haymaker, so that's why I rock it. I like that's a little bit bigger and a little bit bulkier than the Ninja. But overall, I've used Ninjas in the past, and I really like Ninja as well. First Strike, I'd like to mention that the First Strike regulators are also nice. You're looking at an output pressure of 800 PSI for the First Strike Hero regulators, and you can adjust the output pressure on those, but you have to take them apart and put a different spring in and all that stuff. So that's also another option. Those regulators are much smaller. They're only probably about half the length overall. So if you've got a bottle that you really like, but you don't like the length and you're trying to get something shorter, I would explore the first strike regulators. Those are also a really good option. Cody, did I miss anything, or do you have any questions? Cody's just starting to get into the sport, so he might be a good.
The real question is, how much is the tool to fix your powerhouse rig?
You know, that's a good question. I actually don't know that off the top of my head. It's not much, but it is at an expense. So you're looking at $140 for a haymaker, and then you're also looking at purchasing that pop for the extra tool, which it's just a nuisance, right? In the sense of, like, I wish that they incorporate it into the you know, like they shipped it with it, but they don't. All right, guys, so there you have it. That is a comparison of all the different regulators out there on the market. I hopefully answered some questions, some common misconceptions when it comes to paintball tank regulators. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll be paying attention to answer any of your questions. Or if you have any comments, if you have anything that you'd like to add, once again, leave in the comments. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Like, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.